What is going on, YouTube? Welcome back to another episode of the World of Sports podcast. I'm your host, Deegs, and today we're going to be talking about the Milwaukee Brewers. And if you didn't hear yesterday, the Milwaukee Brewers made two significant moves in one, trading for Christian Yelich of the Miami Marlins, after the Marlins seemed to trade away every relevant player on their roster this offseason, and signing former Kansas City Royals All-Star Lorenzo Cain. So today's show is kind of going to be about where these two moves put the Brewers at right now and what they have to do to really propel themselves to legitimately National League contenders. So, for starters, Christian Yelich, I think he's a phenomenal player, really young, very team-friendly deal. The Brewers have 5 more years of only paying him $8 million a year. They did have to give up a lot, but I think for a guy who is on his way up and should be a perennial all-star, this was a pretty good move. And also signing Lorenzo Cain, he is in his 30s. But last year he had a really good year. He had a batting average of over 300. He's always been a really good defensive player in center field, and he's always been kind of that go-to 3-4 kind of hitter that every team wants. So now, shaping up, looking at this Brewers depth chart like I am right now, this is who I believe the Brewers will throw out their opening day, actually at Petco Park against the San Diego Padres. So I think in left field, they're going to stick with Ryan Braun. Braun, after the whole PED thing, he's been pretty decent. He's overpaid. Obviously, his salary's huge for his production, but I think Ryan Braun can still go out there, hit 20, 25 home runs a year, and if he's even 60 to 75% of what he used to be, that's going to be really valuable for this Brewers offense. Then I think you got to go with Cain in center field. The Gold Glover. He's very athletic, very quick, reads the ball well. Throw Yelich in right. Infield, you have Eric Thames, first base, kind of broke out last year after coming over back from the Korean leagues. Hopefully, you get 20, 25 home runs a year from him. He started out really hot and then started to slow down, so that is a concern, but I think overall, Thames should be pretty decent for them over there at first base. Middle infield, you have a combination of Orlando Arcia, Jonathan VR, who has been an all-star before, and Eric Sogard, who for a stretch last year was actually pretty decent. So that's kind of good. You always want to have middle infield depth and be able to shuffle those guys around and see what you can do there. And then third base, you have Travis Shaw, again, a guy who I think could be a perennial all-star. They got him for essentially nothing from the Boston Red Sox. He's a power hitter. He's good with the glove, hits a ton of home runs, gets on base. I really like Travis Shaw. Behind the dish, you have a combination, kind of a platoon of either Manuel Pena or Stephen Vogt. Vogt has been an all-star, when he played for the Oakland Athletics, but overall you got to go with the young rookie and Manny Pena. I think he should get the bulk of the work. He's a good hitter, spreads the field really well, good defensive catcher. Just need to get him to work with some of the arms that the Brewers have brought in or some of the arms that they had from last year, but overall, I think Manny Pena is a pretty good player. Now, if we just look at their outfield real quick, Domingo Santana is a guy who stands out for me. Really good year last year for them. I think he batted somewhere around 280. He's kind of the odd man out in this really loaded outfield, as well as Keon Broxton. So I think if you can package Broxton and Santana to go out and get either a bullpen arm or a starting pitcher, it's something the Brewers definitely have to do. I have seen something, some people say, put Santana on the left and get rid of Ryan Braun. I think you kind of got to stick with Braun. One, because his crappy contract isn't really going to net as big of a return because teams will kind of view bringing in his salary as kind of a big part of that deal. So I don't think a lot of teams will be willing to give up a lot for Ryan Braun. But Domingo Santana still young, Keon Broxton still young, both good athletes. Broxton's got a ton of potential. Santana proved last year that he can hit the ball. So if you can go out and really focus on getting another kind of a back-end starter or another reliever, I think you're kind of golden with those two guys. But one of those two or both of them should be traded before the season starts if Milwaukee wants to make themselves legitimate contenders, because their pitching rotation, which we're going to talk about here in a second, needs some work. So if you look at the beginning or their actual starting rotation, you got Anderson as their number one, Chris Anderson, Zach Davies, and Ulysses Chassin as their 2 and 3. Then you have Giovanni Gallardo and kind of the fifth spot up for grabs. Some things that really pop out to me, and I believe it's Chase Anderson, right? Is it? Yeah, Chase Anderson. I'm sorry. He's kind of their number one. Last year 12 and 4, 2.74 ERA, started 25 games. I like Chase Anderson a lot. He is 30, but I do think that he can be a number one or number two on a pretty decent team. Zach Davies, I saw Zach Davies pitch in person one time. Really impressed with his stuff. He's like 5'10", 5'11", to lefty, throws 93, 94 miles an hour, has real good stuff. Got beaten up a lot last year, but Zach Davies has a ton of potential. He's still really young. Could be a good 3 or 4 for a pretty decent team. Then you look at kind of the back end guys right now. Yovani Gallardo struggled wherever he after he kind of left the Brew Crew. He struggled a lot, but his main success when he was really that go-to number one, number two guy was with the Brewers. And I think that you got to give Gallardo a chance. If he doesn't, he's definitely the weakest pitcher of the guys that I've talked about here, but go out there, give him a chance, see if he can still throw hard. If not, you cut him. You put him on waivers, see what you can get for him. If not, you just either send him to the minors or you get rid of him. And then I think the guy who's going to be a really key piece for the Milwaukee Brewers this year is going to be Ulysses Chacin. Now, Chacin did pitch for the Padres last year, and let me tell you something. I did hate him for a good majority of the year. Every time it was like, oh, he's pitching again. But towards the back end of the season, Ulysses Chacin was actually really good. If he was on a good team, I think he would have had a much better year. He was 13-10. His ERA was 3.89, so it's not really bad. His career ERA is 3.93, which kind of stands out as not really effective. But for this was a guy who was sitting at an ERA of like 5 in July, and he brought it down all the way to 3.89. He was the Padres' number one pitcher. He does have an established go-to strikeout pitch in his slider. His slider is absolutely filthy. I really love his slider. I wish I could throw a slider like that. But if Chacin can bounce back, now he's got a really good team, a playoff contending team that he's playing for, and bounce back and be himself last year, he's going to be really important for this team, especially because they're not very strong pitching-wise. Ulysses Chacin could be a legitimate 3-4 starter on this Milwaukee Brewers team that could really benefit them. Now, if we take a look at their bullpen, I don't really like any of their bullpen guys, to be honest, except for Corey Neville. Neville, phenomenal closer. Really good, really important to have a good closer nowadays because a lot of games in the playoffs, especially, they go 8-9 innings. They go into the 8th and 9th inning, really close games. So if you have kind of that shutdown guy at the end of your bullpen, then you really have a guy that you can trust to go out there and get you 3 outs. You really have something extremely valuable. So I like Corey Neville. Other than him, they need to make some moves to go get some bullpen pieces or sign someone. I think a guy who Milwaukee should look at, and this is going to kill me to say, and I say this pretty much about every single playoff contending team, is Brad Hand of the San Diego Padres. If you don't know who Brad Hand is, phenomenal lefty. The last 2 years, he's been one of the best lefty relievers in baseball. He's got a dirty slider fastball, sits 93, 94, really good curveball. Comes in, shuts the door down for the Padres. Blew one save last year after picking up the closer duties at the All-Star break. I think he was 23 for 24. Dude's phenomenal. Love Brad Hand. My favorite player on the San Diego Padres. But just because relievers are very volatile, and I don't think you can kind of trust them for many years, and they just signed into a really team-friendly contract, you could get a pretty decent return for Brad Hand. So the Brewers have a pretty good farm system. I think the Padres should look at potentially trading Brad Hand to Milwaukee, or the Brewers should inquire about Brad Hand if they haven't already. So now, just looking at some things that I think the Brewers should do to really make themselves legitimate National League West contenders, but also like National League title contenders. I've talked about a few. I think they need to get rid of either Braun, Broxton, or Santana. Don't think they should get rid of Braun because they won't be able to get as much back for him. But it's mostly Broxton and Yelich. Not Yelich, they just traded for Yelich, but mostly Santana and Broxton they need to look at getting rid of. Maybe, definitely, they need to add another pitcher or two to their rotation they can trust and go out there and get that back, strengthen that back into the starting rotation, but especially strengthen that bullpen because you need a really good bullpen to compete at the playoff level. But real quick, I just want to talk about one thing and one specific player that has been linked to the Milwaukee Brewers, and that's kind of the most coveted free agent pitcher still in the market right now, and that's Yu Darvish. We know Yu Darvish, former Texas Rangers ace, pitched for the Dodgers last year. Don't think he's going back to L.A. Don't even think L.A. was in his top 5 teams that he wanted to sign with. The Brewers were, though, and I think that if the Brewers can go out there and bring in Yu Darvish, maybe like a 4-year deal, 5-year deal, maybe even 3-year deal, and they can bring him in and establish him as their true number 1 or number 2 guy, depending on how you view Chase Anderson, that would be really important for Milwaukee because then you look at a team that goes four guys deep, where your fourth guy is Zach Davies or Chacin, which is a pretty decent four guy. If we're looking at last year's numbers and we're just kind of basing it off what these guys have. And then you go out and you get a pitcher with Santana, Broxton, or Braun, and now you go five guys deep. Or you add a bullpen piece with four-man solid pitching rotation. That's really important. I think the biggest focus for the Milwaukee Brewers right now, their number one priority, should be going out there, throwing money at Yu Darvish, bringing him in. Because if you look at the National League, right, in their division, one team contends with them. I don't think St. Louis is there. I think it's the Cubs. The Cubs are the only team that contends with them. And if they lose Darvish to the Cubs, that's going to be huge. I don't think that that the Brewers have a chance to win the National League West if Yu Darvish signs with the Cubs. Then you look at the rest of the National League. You have in the East, the Nationals. Every other team in that division is awful. Then you look at the West. You have the Rockies. You have the D-backs, who are going to be without J.D. Martinez, and you have the Dodgers, right, who just lost Yu Darvish. So the National League really is not that strong, other than the Dodgers. And I guess the Giants, depending on if you think the Giants have the kind of the weapons to go out there and make a playoff push. The Cubs and the Nationals, the wild card, and I would even argue their division is wide open. And I think the Brewers could really contend for definitely a playoff spot if they get Yu Darvish, but even on like a National League title spot, because anything can happen. One, it's baseball, anything can happen. But two, good pitching with this offense will get them far in the playoff push. So if he signs with the Dodgers or the Cubs, I think whatever team he goes to is the clear-cut front runner to win National League pennant. But he goes to Milwaukee, and you're looking at a really dangerous situation there. So that's all I have for you guys today. Thanks for watching. We've been working real hard on this, so please drop a like, subscribe, comment if you'd like, and thanks again.